Okay, so this is a video that just extends what we talked about yesterday when we figured out the limiting reactant. So we've been able to determine the answer for a problem when you're given amounts for both reactants. So this picture helps us to see, like, okay, how much, just in picture form, that there is some reactant left over. Okay, so the circled portions are showing that those reactants turn into those products. Okay, the reaction here is one that we've seen in our notes. N2 plus 3H2 makes 2 NH3. Okay, so once all of the hydrogens are used up, then we've got 2 leftover nitrogen molecules. Okay, so this is saying that the limiting reactant is the hydrogen gas and the excess reactant is nitrogen gas. So not only do we just need to know that the excess reactant is left over, but we can actually calculate how much is left over. So what we do for calculating is you take your answer for the amount of product that you produced, the one that you've chosen, and then convert it back to grams of the excess reactant. So this maximum amount of product is the answer, the choice, your picked answer. And then you're converting it back to grams of the excess reactant, because probably your excess reactant was given originally as grams. Okay, so once you convert it back, so you're going to do a whole other line of parentheses, just convert it back to grams of excess reactant, then that answer is the amount of excess reactant that was used by the reaction. Not how much is left over, how much was used. So to find how much is left over, you take the original amount given of the excess reactant, whatever it was in the problem when you started this whole big mess kind of thing, and then you subtract away the amount that's used, and then that answer, that subtraction answer, would then be how much is left over. Okay, so we're going to use information from example 8 to help us calculate this out. Okay, so just so that we can see the steps of what we're going to do, the first thing that we're going to do, step 1. Step 1, we're going to take our answer from example 8. So I'm pulling this from example 8, and that is, we chose 50.1 grams of the Cu2S. That was our answer from example 8. And we're going to convert that into grams of our excess reactant, which that is sulfur, because we didn't choose sulfur as the answer. So we're going to turn that into grams of sulfur. And this will be the sulfur that is used by the reaction. Okay? After we figure out the grams of sulfur that have been used, then step 2, we're going to take the original amount of sulfur that we're given in example 8, which was 12.5 grams. So 12.5 grams of sulfur, and that's from the problem, example 8's problem, and subtract the grams of sulfur used, and that will give us the grams of sulfur that are left over after the reaction's done. Okay, so if you need to go back and definitely look at example 8, if you need to go back to video 4 and listen to that part to know why we picked that and all that kind of stuff. I was just doing that. So let me clear my screen so that I can write on here. So the first thing we have to do, we said, was convert our 50.1 grams of copper 1 sulfide 2 grams of sulfur. So the nice thing is we already found these molar masses, so we don't have to find them again. We just are placing them in these spots. So to go away from the gram circle, we're going to divide by molar mass. And this is the molar mass of what we have, the CU2S, which was 159.144. Okay, then to go back to sulfur, it's just going to be a 1-to-1 ratio, which is really nice. But we're going to put 1 mole of sulfur in the numerator and 1 mole of CU2S in the denominator. So that way we're getting rid of CU2S and we're switching to sulfur. Okay. Then the last step, we want grams of sulfur. So we need to multiply by the molar mass of sulfur over 1 mole of sulfur to cancel it out. So keeping with our 3 significant figures, I solved this and I got that we had 10.1 grams of sulfur used by the reaction. Okay, so that's not our final answer yet. We want to know how much is left over, what remains, but this is getting us there. So we figured out how much was used. So now to find out how much is left, we have to subtract this 10.1 from the original amount of sulfur for the reaction. And the original amount of sulfur was 12.5 grams. So if we take 12.5 minus 10.1, that is 2.4. Now, just a little refresher with significant figures. When you're adding and subtracting, you keep the same number of decimal places. If you're multiplying divide, that's when you look at the whole number. So 2.4 is rounded correctly because each of our numbers has just 1 decimal place. So we should keep 1 decimal place. Okay. So number 4 on the limiting reactant worksheet is like this, where you use your answer from number 3 to then figure out how much is left over from that excess reactant.